to they want to compromise that, and that's where we get into theistic evolution. They try to start making science work with the Bible when really science is not working against the Bible. It's the inappropriate or inaccurate application of science.
Is it fair to say, at least in your humble opinion, okay, is it fair to say that when people say, well, I believe in science, but I don't believe in the Bible, because the science doesn't fit with the Bible? Do you think it's fair to say that really what they've done is they've taken a bias of what they think science is and say, well, that doesn't fit with the Bible? Is that fair, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of times where people say it's a science versus religion debate, and that's not true at all. My science is just as good as any evolutionist science. As Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis said, it's not just some facts that we can use and then they have a whole bunch of facts that they can use. The facts are the facts. And as you've talked about before, it's not the facts that are disputable. The facts are the facts, but our interpretation of those facts can be disputed, and I can interpret things a very different way than you do. And not to say that it's just one of those things where the evolutionist will believe that evolution is true, so he looks at the facts as though evolution were true, and then that helps him interpret the information. And you have to do that. I mean, to a point. The scientist, they say science is amoral, it doesn't direct anything. Well, that's true, but the scientist is just a person, and he has an agenda. Whether he admits it or not, the scientist believes something. And there are cases where, like in the story of the Urey Miller experiment, they believed that amino acids could be formed in nature with a strike of lightning. So then they thought about it and decided that this is what the atmosphere must have been like, because these are the chemicals that we need to make amino acids if we hit them with lightning. And so that's what they would commonly refer to as circular reasoning. They accuse creationists of that all the time. Well, that is a perfect example of circular reasoning. I think that it happened, so then this must be what it must have been like for it to happen, so then that must be true, so then I can make it happen.
And that's really not what should be going on. It should be, well, I think this happened, but I'm just going to let it be, and we'll see what happens, right? Is that fair? Or?
Yeah, and then the tragedy happens when you do your experiment, you are proven absolutely as wrong as can be, and then it gets heralded as a great success because you don't interpret it the way it's clearly presented. You can't do this. You can't throw stuff together and get a slime that turns into a person. You can't do that. At least as of yet, no one's even come close to it. But then the news media grabs a hold of it and throws it out there like it's the greatest scientific discovery of all time. They just created life in a test tube, and then 6 months later they may have a rebuttal for it. Yeah, and they'll recant on that, but nobody cares because it's like on the bottom right hand, down in a sentence. Oh, by the way, this wasn't correct, and that's not science. That's politics, really. I mean, that's just the way politics works. We have an agenda. We're moving forward. Yep. We're advancing evolution because those darn creationists are dangerous, and they're going to undermine evolution. Which they talk about how great evolution is and how important it is in society. Evolution has not provided a single thing for us. If anything, I think it's actually slowed us down.
Oh, say that again. If anything, what?
If anything, I think the evolutionary thought process has actually slowed us down in discovery.
Okay, why do you say that? Because they would say, again, exactly the opposite. I mean, they would say, well, we need evolution because we see that these super germs are taking over, and if we don't learn how evolution works, we're not going to be able to fight these super germs, for instance. Well, I mean, help us understand this.
I don't necessarily think that you can use genetics to determine that kind of stuff, but it's not necessarily evolution. Killing out a whole bunch of bacteria, except for a couple that maybe for whatever reason were resistant to your drug. I mean, it's real common with penicillin now.
Well, that's what it is. Yeah.
They can't kill stuff with penicillin anymore. So that's a super germ. Well, it's not a super germ. It's actually a deficient germ. The bacteria doesn't have all the stuff that the other bacteria had. There's a little sensor out there that picks up penicillin and it kills the bacteria. Well, if you were lucky to be born without that, that means you were born without arms. You're actually less of a functional than everybody else. But then somebody comes around and kills everybody with arms, so you get to live. So that
In essence, that's what's kind of happening with those supposed, quote, super germs,
Yeah.
end quote.
they would call it evolution when it's actually devolution. You're
Okay.
actually getting less complex, not more.
Okay. All right. Again, friend, I'm sitting down with Steve Reisner, who's a chiropractor out of Findlay, Ohio. And you are listening to Do Not Keep Silent. My name is Jason Zurich. Glad you guys are tuning in. And, if you have questions or anything, for those of you watching the video, right down there somewhere, just put your questions and we'll get to it. But, Steve, because you're a chiropractor, I definitely want to ask, could you just share with us one thing as far as how the spine works with our nerves? I don't get all that stuff, but why, as far as just that in itself, because it's just fascinating to me. I mean, you could, if you will, kind of crack someone's neck or do whatever you're going to do, and then that helps your spleen. I don't know. How does that work? That's so odd.
Well, we are put together pretty fantastically. And we can go over all kinds of really neat things that our body does. Our brain cells move at 170 miles an hour or send impulses at 170 miles an hour. And we calculate more every second. I see car commercials where they talk about millions of calculations that this car makes every second. I actually think that that's probably not true. But the human body, working on the power of a 10-watt light bulb, 10 watts is about what your brain works on, is more powerful than any supercomputer that's ever been developed. Every cell of my body, 40 quadrillion of them, are talking to my brain right now, and my brain's communicating with all those cells, organizing, coordinating. The main gist of chiropractic is if you have interference in your nervous system because your spine, which is the structure that protects your nervous system, or a good portion of your central nervous system, if it's out of place, it can cause interference, and that can actually cause your nervous system to not function efficiently. It's like if your body is is the orchestra and your brain is the conductor, and there's some fog in the room, or someone in the orchestra has a dark pair of glasses on, they can't see you, so they're having a hard time interpreting what they're supposed to be doing. My job would be to find the guy who's got the glasses on and take them off. That's what I do. I clear the nervous system, which, your brain is the master coordinator. There's nothing that happens in your body. You experience life through your nervous system, and if that's not functioning correctly, that causes deficiency. It can cause high blood pressure. It can cause back pain, which is usually what brings people to the chiropractor. But that pain, that spot that hurts, has a nerve that comes out of it that goes to your stomach. It goes to your lungs. It goes to your spleen. It goes to your liver, which has over 500 functions of the liver. Tell me how that evolved.
Yeah.
Who's the unlucky guy that only had 400 functions out of his liver and he didn't make it then? All these things, that the body is so complex. They've been working on a robotic hand. They can't make a hand anywhere near the amazing complexity of our hand. This is the most this is the most versatile tool on the planet.
A hand.
This thing can do anything. You can balance a soap bubble on your hand. You can swing a 15-pound sledgehammer with your hand. You can play the piano, type 60 words a minute, or you can dig a hole with it. There's nothing like that in the world, and that's just your hand. Just imagine the rest of it. It's pretty fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And, as we get out of here, Steve, if there was just one thing you could tell our listeners, because we're going to obviously have you back, and everyone, if you've been enjoying this, I'd like to know, because we're thinking of having Steve get involved more. We really appreciate him. Just the knowledge he has is so great, and he's just got a great voice for radio. You do. You really, he's like looking at me going, whatever. But if there was just one thing you could share with our listeners, whatever it is, it could be about our conversation we've had or whatever. What's God's been showing you, whatever it could be, what would that be?
I think the greatest information someone can take home from any kind of conversation about this stuff is think about it. Just think about it. Look at the information. Don't let someone else tell you if it's right or wrong. Just look at the information. Does it actually even make sense? Does it seem possible? Does it seem possible that nature could accidentally, without any thought, and that's something I think a lot of people don't realize when we're talking about nature getting this stuff to happen, there's absolutely, it's like shaking up a bag full of nothing, and when you throw it on the ground, then you've got a computer or your Macintosh here. It's just all the parts thrown in a bag. I shake it together and throw it out. There's no intention there, and no direction. Is it really possible to make something more complex than we can even understand? when we're trying to make stuff that's complex, biomimicry is like an industry. We look at stuff all the time and copy it to make stuff. So I guess the take-home message is just think about it, because evolution, from just a logical standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's a fairy tale.
Well, if people want to get a hold of you, how could they do that?
You can email me at, the easiest email is reisnerspinalcenter@gmail.com.
Can you spell that name?
RISNER, spinal, SPINAL, center, CENTER, @gmail. You can find me on Facebook, really, too. Just search for Steve Reisner, and there's probably a picture of one of my children as a profile pic. I have 3 fantastic boys. And or you can find my website, which is reisnerspinalcenter.com, and my contact information is on there as well.
Okay. And you also work with youth too, don't you?
I do.
Yep. And it's fun.
It is.
It's great. I love working with students. And friend, again, thank you so much for tuning in. And again, if you want to find out more information about what we're doing, go to DoNotKeepSilent.com or WorldViewWarriors.org. And look out. Look, just get out there. Speak out the name of Jesus Christ in action and word. Do not keep silent, everybody. See you later. Bye.